Alrighty, so it's 6:05. I can still see people popping in, but I think I might make a start. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate all of you sort of signing on tonight. My head is going to turn because I'm using multiple screens, so it's going to look a little bit weird if my eye's not looking directly at the camera. But here we go. I get this question quite a lot. So ever wonder why some people can eat whatever they want and never gain weight, while others typically can struggle? So there's a couple of reasons for this. The first one is genetics. And so some people are just more genetically predisposed to have a faster metabolism or a slower metabolism. They might have that body type that just naturally burns more calories at rest. So genetic factors, which we can't change, these will influence your basal metabolic rate. It also influences how you store fat, so where your body puts it. And it also works on appetite regulation, so how full or how hungry you might feel. The other thing that can influence some people is lifestyle and activity levels. So for some people, they just naturally move more, they're more active during the day, even if they don't do planned physical activity. So this is actually called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which I'll talk to you about. And this includes things like they fidget a lot more during the day, or they walk around a little bit more. They stand instead of sit. And so these small movements are pretty important, and they can add up to hundreds of calories that can be burned throughout the week. The other one is that diet quality and portion awareness. So sometimes you might look at someone and it appears that they eat whatever they want, but look at the portion sizes. So sometimes they eat a lot more smaller portions when they don't even realize it. They choose foods that are a lot more calorie good, in a simple term, instead of calorie dense. They also naturally stop eating when they're full. And for some people, their hormones are a little bit out of balance, and so they'll keep eating a lot further than some others. There are some interesting stuff on gut microbiome. We're still in the early stages of discovering about this. So some research might suggest that gut bacteria in our digestive system can influence how we digest and store some fat. Some people might just have microbiome that helps them stay a little bit more lean. And then, of course, we've also got medical conditions and medications that you might be on. So if you look at people who have hypothyroidism, so when your thyroid is not working as good as it should, they might also have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then also insulin resistance. They might be on medications that increase appetite. So some antidepressants do this, some blood pressure medications do this. We also know medications we use for cholesterol can also affect how we store and gain weight. So it's not a simple answer necessarily. So what is a calorie? So a calorie is a unit of energy. Specifically, it's the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So nutrition is not solely about counting calories or restricting food groups. It's about providing our bodies with the essential components they need to function optimally. So these essential components, known as nutrients, include carbohydrates, they include proteins, fats, your vitamins, your minerals, and of course, water. So when we talk about nutrition, we often think about it as fuel. So just as a car requires the right type of fuel to run smoothly, our bodies require the right balance of nutrients to perform at their best. So when we look at energy production and cellular repair, every aspect of this is energy, and we need those nutrients to perform optimally. So essentially, it is calories in and calories out. So when you eat and drink, that's your calories in, and when you expend energy, that's your calories out. So if you eat more calories than you burn, then of course you may gain some weight. If you eat fewer calories than you burn, you should lose weight. If you eat the same as what you burn, then you should maintain the same weight. So we can always try and practice the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time we should be eating really well, and allow some flexibility, which is about that 20% of time. So not all calories are created equally. So when we say this, we mean that the source of calories matters just as much as the number. So when you're looking at weight loss, we want to look at nutrient density versus empty calories. So on here, I've given you a simple idea of, what would be nutrient dense and what's empty. So if someone is having 2,500 calories a day, you can look at broccoli. So to get 100 calories from broccoli, you would have to eat 294 grams, which is a lot. It's very space occupying, and so trying to lose weight, that's what we're looking for. Versus if you're having a can of Coke, 100 calories is that one can. It's not going to fill you up. It's not going to occupy much space. So nutrient-dense foods like vegetables, your fruits, your protein, whole grains, they provide water, they provide vitamins, they have fiber, they have protein, they have carbohydrates, along with those calories. So when we're looking at empty calorie foods like the Coke or the chips or the peanut butter, they provide lots of calories, but very little nutrition. So this has an impact on hunger and fullness. So some foods will help you feel full and a bit more satisfied, so looking at your broccoli content, while others will make you feel hungry again. So if you're hungry and you have a can of Coke, it's only going to fill you up so much and you're going to get hungry again. Protein and fiber, they help control appetite. So this is when we always bang on about protein intake, and fiber. Refined carbohydrates and sugar. So these will just spike your blood sugar. They'll make you feel good because you've had something sweet. It then drops and then you'll crave food and then you'll get hungry again. So this becomes very relevant for weight loss in particular, because if you're only counting calories and eating mostly processed or sugary foods, you will feel hungrier. You're going to overeat later. You'll miss out on essential nutrients. So you might even meet someone who, lives in a larger body and they can be nutrient deficient in a lot of things. And they'll struggle with energy and you'll get more cravings. But when we focus on quality of calories, you're more likely to feel fuller for longer. You're going to eat less overall. You're going to support your metabolism, which is very important, and then will improve your health while you're trying to lose weight. So thermogenesis. Thermogenesis refers to the production of heat in the body. So this is a byproduct of burning those calories. So it's how your body uses energy to keep you alive and active. So there's 4 main components to this of what your daily energy expenditure is. So you have your basal metabolic rate. So what it is, it's the number of calories your body burns at rest to keep you alive. So basically while you're resting and you're digesting your food. So this includes breathing, your blood circulating around your body, your brain is functioning, and you're having cellular repair. So the importance of this is it makes up 60 to 70% of your daily calorie burn. So even if you stayed in bed all day and did absolutely nothing, you'd still be burning calories thanks to your BMR. So factors that can influence your BMR are your gender, your weight, your age, and your height. The most important thing is the more muscle mass that you have, we can influence your basal metabolic rate because muscle requires more energy than fat. We've also got the thermic effect of food, which is your TEF. So this is the energy your body uses to digest the food that you've eaten and process it. So this can vary with the macronutrients that you eat, which are your protein, your carbs, and your fats. So proteins burn most of those calories, so about 20 to 30%. Carbohydrates are a little bit less. They're sitting at about 5 to 10%, fat even less than that. So the importance of this, when we talk about your thermic effect of food, again, we focus on protein because we know that's going to have the highest effect on that. Then we also have non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is your NEAT. So this is calories burned every day from movements that are not related to formal exercise. So remember when I was saying you have people that stand more when they're working, or just general times in the day, they fidget a lot more. This is going to be influencing that calorie burn. And this actually contributes 15 to 20%. So when you're walking around the house, when you're answering the phone, when you're on the phone and walking around the house, taking the stairs instead of the lift, this increases the NEAT, and this again is very important when you're doing weight loss. Because when you're doing weight loss and you're having restriction, your body tends to tackle this first. It makes you move a lot less and makes you more tired. And so when you increase your steps and you do all these extra things, we can improve that, which will have a good effect on your energy balance. Then we've got exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is when you're doing more planned exercise. So this is the calories burned when you intentionally do physical activity. And this will definitely differ on the activity that you are doing. So that's why it will only contribute to 5 to 30%. So when you're running or you're weightlifting or you're cycling or you're doing sports, this is your exercise activity. Engaging physical activity, especially high intense activity, increases the body's heat production. You even get a greater EAT when you're doing more weightlifting and using weights, because there's a lot more energy needed to perform those exercises. And so you get this calorie burn or the after. You'll tend to hear influencers talk about that. So this all equals into your total daily energy expenditure. So this represents how many calories you burn in that full day. So remember, we can't really influence your BMR, only ever so slightly, but the other stuff we can influence just. So when you actually understand what your total daily energy needs are, we can then set realistic calorie goals for weight loss and certainly maintenance. So when you're looking at an equation to work this out, I have put this in my nutrition course, and I'm sure you can look online for this. But this number is very important, because then we can work out what your actual energy expenditure is, and then we'll do a calorie deficit or a surplus if you want to get away. It's not going to be exact unless you're in a metabolic ward and we've got you hooked up to lots of machines to work this out as accurately as possible, but there's certainly some really good equations that you can use to get you started. So why is all of this important? So many people think weight loss is just about exercising more. So I'll see lots of patients come through my room and they've seen their GP or nutritionist or dietitian, exercise physiologist, and they've said, oh, well, all you need to do is exercise more and eat less. But remember, exercise is only a small part of the picture. So most of your calorie burn comes from your basal metabolic rate, like I showed you, at least 60 to 70%, and your non-exercise activity. So understanding this helps you realize you don't have to spend so many hours in the gym. And this is where gyms do really well. They have New Year's resolutions, you book in and you start running on the treadmill, and people go, I haven't lost any weight, because it's not going to perform the way you think it's going to. When you do small daily changes, like walking that extra 20 minutes of the day or standing up regularly, if you're working in an office and getting up around if you can, these are the things that are going to make the biggest difference. So when you understand the thermic effect of food also, they will see why eating more protein and fiber helps with weight loss, because we know it burns more calories during digestion and it will keep you fuller for longer. So we do need to shift the focus from just calories in. It's just not about eating less. It's also about how your body uses the energy. So when you understand thermogenesis, it's quite simple. There's no big secret. There's not someone that knows the big secret to weight loss. It's actually quite simple. And when you understand thermogenesis, it's easier. So we do need to boost your NEAT, your non-exercise activity. So be more active throughout the day. We need to support your basal metabolic rate, maintaining muscle mass. and we need to choose foods that are going to support that. Also remember that everyone's metabolism is very different. So some people have a naturally higher BMR, like I mentioned, while others will need to do a lot more physical activity or non-exercise activity, or have a different diet quality to make an effect. So these are the common mistakes I see when people start to do fad diets. Because common dieting mistakes, extreme diets just don't work. You tend to lose a lot more muscle loss, which we don't want to do. We'll start to get metabolic adaptation, which I'll talk to you about. We may see some hormonal imbalances, mood swings, so people tend to get hangry and angry that their weight loss journey isn't working because they're on extreme diets and they're starving. And like I said, we'll see some nutrient deficiencies. You'll get really low energy because your body's trying to conserve as much energy as it possibly can. And so again, you'll get a lot less movement out of yourself and you'll feel tired, and then you'll start to look at the green veggies and hate it. The other question I get asked with, weight loss and dieting, what about rapid weight loss? So when we're trying to do weight loss, we're looking for a gradual loss of approximately 0.5 to 1 kilogram per week. With rapid weight loss, it really should only be used in certain circumstances, like if you're preparing for surgery or you need to shift some weight very quickly. Some people might say, well, the quicker you lose the weight, the quicker I'm going to put it on. This is not necessarily true, and research is actually not showing that. What we're actually seeing with research is that rapid weight loss can be just as effective as gradual weight loss in the long term. There is one key difference here, is that with rapid weight loss, it often involves very low calorie diets, and these are often very difficult for people to maintain. The other thing is with rapid weight loss, we have some downsides. So you'll get a lot more muscle loss, you'll get some nutrient deficiencies, and then you will get rebound weight gain, if you suddenly start to eat normally again, because you haven't put in those sustainable changes throughout doing a gradual weight loss. So while rapid weight loss is not inherently terrible and it doesn't lead to faster regain, it's crucial to adopt those healthy habits that you can learn while you're doing more of a gradual weight loss journey. So these are some of the diet strategies that I'll see day to day. We all heard of the low carbohydrate diet, the ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, low fat, intermittent fasting, and time restricted eating. The same, the 5 and 2 diet. They're all really good tools. There can be some positives and negatives for them all. But when we actually look at the studies, when you're controlling the amount of calories that you're taking in throughout the whole week, if you're in a deficit, you should be losing weight. The only difference is that extreme diets don't work. People tend to not be able to sustain them for very long. We haven't seen the magic bullet with time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting. We don't see those extra health benefits like some influencers are purporting. The carnivore diet is pretty much the same as a ketogenic diet. It's just wearing a different set of clothing. So with the ketogenic diet, because that's probably the one that I see most in my rooms, there is a bit of confusion about fat burn and fat loss. So when you're on a high fat diet, yes, you will burn more fat because your body is getting more fat as fuel. So that's your calorie intake. So you're oxidizing that fat you're eating. You're not necessarily burning the fat that is actually stored in your body. So this is the same as if you were on a high carbohydrate diet, you burn more glucose because you're eating more carbohydrates. So the problem here is that people tend to confuse fat burning with actual fat loss. They're not the same thing. So fat loss is not what your body burns in the moment. It's actually about the negative energy balance. So if you are consuming less overall and expending more energy, there should be a weight loss effect. So you don't have to do these silly fad diets. So with this, just try and eat a little bit less and you should get the same outcome. So I'm sure you're all staring at the screen and saying, well, What diet should I pick then? Of course, one that you can sustain. Also, we need to change the idea of the diet culture because we're not on a diet for the rest of our lives. We're changing our lifestyle habits. We're changing how we eat protein, how we look at food, how we move our bodies. It's not just about the diet. So again, we're looking at nutrient dense versus calorie dense foods. So your nutrient dense foods are going to be ones that have lots of volume, they've got fewer calories, higher in protein, higher in fiber, higher in water. Think of these as foods that give you the most nutritional bang for the buck. When you have calorie dense foods, on the other hand, these ones are very high in calories, they're very low in nutrients. They often contain those added sugars, the added fats, and refined carbohydrates. So this would be, your fast food, your sugary drinks, your chips, your chocolate, your pastries. These foods can lead to weight gain. They also cause energy crashes. Even eaten in excess, you will start to put on weight. So the aim is to have volume eating. So you're eating a lot more nutrient dense, which is in larger portions because they're not as calorie dense. On here, I've tried to give you an example of the difference of this. So when we talk about satiety, this is the feeling of fullness and satisfaction you have after eating. So foods that are more satiating, they help you feel fuller for longer, they reduce your cravings, and they make it so much easier to eat fewer calories without being deprived, like you would with some of those fat diets. So for an example, if we look at oatmeal or porridge, however you want to call it. So if you look at one serve of oatmeal, you're looking at a 3/4 cup of cooked porridge, and this is one serving versus only half a cup of cereal flakes or 1.5 wheat Bix biscuits. The difference is that they're just not going to be as filling for you, and so you're going to try and find something else to fill your day. So when we focus on protein intake with each meal, whether it's an animal source or if it's plant-based, protein is going to be your most satiating nutrient. This also helps to preserve muscle mass. It reduces your hunger hormones. And so when you pair it also with a carbohydrate like oatmeal or cereal or toast, it will also slow down your blood sugar spikes. So this becomes really important for people who have diabetes or insulin resistance. Fiber is super important. We don't eat enough fiber. This will also slow digestion and it adds bulk to your food. It will help you feel fuller for longer too. And so examples of fibers is all your vegetables, your fruits, your legumes, and your whole grains. So if you're looking at white bread, it's not going to have much fiber versus a whole grainy bread. It's going to have plenty of fiber and protein in it. We also want foods that have high water content because again, this is going to add volume in your stomach without the calories. And fat is calorie dense, but it can also help with satiety, but we need to pick the right fats. So that's going to be your avocado, your oils, your nuts, of course, in moderation. And being able to read a nutrition information panel becomes super handy when you're trying to look at all of this in the greater picture, not trying to count calories. So metabolic adaptation. So metabolic adaptation is also known as adaptive thermogenesis, and I kind of was pointing towards this in the beginning. So this is when the body's process of adjusting its energy expenditure in response to changes in body weight and calorie intake. So what this means is it's a bit of a phenomenon, terrible word, phenomenon as a survival mechanism. So when we were doing fast and famine and then we were eating lots of food, this is our way of protecting us. So when we start to lose a bit of weight and go into major calorie deficits, your body perceives it as a potential threat to your survival and it will respond by conserving energy. So what it starts to do is it starts to slow down your basal metabolic rate because it's trying to protect you, it's trying to reduce that energy expenditure. If you have a lot less body mass to maintain, so you'll start to lose muscle mass. So again, this is why we do a slower approach to weight loss, because your muscle mass is a lot more active than fat. There's a lot more burn. So when you lose your muscle mass, this will decrease further lowering basal metabolic rate. Your body also becomes really efficient at performing physical activity. So when you start to lose weight too quickly, your NEAT starts to decrease. So you become a lot more less spontaneous with movement. So you don't fidget as much and you start to become more tired. So even if you were doing the same task as you were before, your body starts to use fewer calories to perform that same task. So this increased efficiency is an evolutionary adaptation, basically, to prevent starvation during times of food scarcity. Hormones that regulate your metabolism, which is your thyroid. We also have hormones like ghrelin. So this is released when you need to feel hungry. And we also have leptin. This is a signal of fullness. These become a little bit deranged, and so it makes you a lot more hungry and you become less effective at your leptin levels. So again, you'll start to gain weight. The TEF, so your thermic effect of food, can decrease with weight loss also. So you'll have an overall lower energy expenditure when you eat food. So this means your body burns fewer calories processing the same food. So to avoid metabolic adaptation, we need to do no extreme deficits for extended periods. We need to again prioritize protein, so that higher thermic effect of food helps to maintain that muscle and metabolism. We need to do strength training because that's going to preserve your muscle mass. And we need to do diet breaks. Diet breaks are actually super important. A diet break is planned, it's temporary, where you intentionally increase your calorie intake to maintenance levels. And to understand your maintenance levels, we need to go back to your total daily energy expenditure. So after a period of being on a restriction or doing a diet, we need to take a break. And this break can be 10 days, it could be a week, it could even be 6 months. And the only time you stop the diet break is when you start to notice a little bit of weight regain. That means we need to go into a deficit again. So diet breaks are actually really important. And I'll see patients in my room and they'll be like, I've been taking 500 calories a day for the last year and I'm not losing weight. It's because their body's in starvation and it's trying to preserve as much energy as possible. And so, yeah, we do need to take a diet break. So this one, really, really important. We see this all the time. Buy this magic solution or buy this detox pill or whatever it is to hack your metabolism. You can't. You cannot change it. As I've shown, as long as you understand energy balance and thermogenesis, you can't hack it. So scroll past that if you can. So what we do know when you're doing weight loss, combining interventions lead to better weight loss. So we know behavior change, so this is just doing nutrition changes, exercise changes, you would see a 3 to 5% overall body weight loss, which is good, but we want more. What we do know with behavior, nutrition, exercise, and weight loss medications, we're now hitting that 10 to 15 to 20%, which is pretty amazing. And then, of course, bariatric surgery, you're still getting that 20 to 40%. So weight loss medications. So I get asked a lot about this. I use these a lot in my clinic. They're pretty amazing. So there are quite a few out there on the market. I think the most popular one that we have now is called a GLP-1 medication. And this is a type of drug that mimics a natural hormone that we have in our body. It's called a glucagon-like peptide 1. These medications have been around for more than 20 years. So they were first introduced to treat type 2 diabetes. They were pretty useless back then. You had to inject it 30 to 60 minutes before you ate twice a day, and so patient compliance wasn't all that good. And the primary endpoint for the GLP-1s wasn't actually weight loss, it was more about glucose control. But because we started to evolve and see how good this hormone worked in people, we started to see how it affected affected obesity and weight loss. So it's gained a lot of popularity over the ability to manage both blood sugar control and weight loss. So how these medications work. So like I said, a GLP-1 is a hormone that we naturally release in our gut after you eat. It has quite a lot of roles in our body. So it stimulates insulin release from the pancreas. It suppresses glucagon. So this is a hormone that actually raises your blood sugar. It slows down gastric emptying. So when people are on this medication, they feel fuller for longer. And it also reduces appetite. So it goes into the brain and tells the brain that you're not. So GLP-1 medications, they mimic this effect that we would naturally do in our body. What's important to note is that, yes, it works for the vast majority, but 20% of people will not respond to this medication. And I do see that from time to time. They are very expensive. So the weight loss industry has caught up. It is charging an arm and a leg for these medications, and they are not a magic fix. So they work best when you combine it with healthy eating and physical activity. There are also side effects. So some people might experience nausea, they might have vomiting. I've never seen vomiting. They might have digestive discomfort, so maybe experience a bit of constipation, a bit of diarrhea initially when starting, but generally pretty good. So I thought I'd plug my nutrition program because I go into all of this in a lot more depth. Tonight I just wanted to give you a general overview of everything and kind of open the floor to you to ask me lots of questions. So if you've got them, just pop them into the Q&A and I'll go through them all with you now. So the key takeaways from tonight, we need to avoid those stream diets. They don't work. They're not sustainable. We need to do a moderate deficit. So like I said, that 0.5 to 1 kilogram of weight loss per week. We need to prioritize protein. So whether that is animal protein or plant protein, it should still work. And we're aiming for about that 0.8 grams a kilogram body weight and working our way up from there. Strength training is super, super important. So you don't need to get a gym membership and start running on a treadmill. It's not going to work. And we do need to incorporate diet breaks. So you cannot be on a calorie restriction forever and ever. We need to build those consistent, realistic habits. No food is actually off limits. So sometimes when I go through diets with patients and actually show them what a calorie intake looks like, they might actually eat a Magnum every night. As long as that's built into your calorie portion, it doesn't really matter. You need to keep moving, and that's really important. That's your non-exercise activity. And weight loss is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Thank you. So I'm just going to open up the questions. I do have a couple of questions that were emailed to me. But what you can do, if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you just go to the Q&A and just pop your questions in there, anything, you can ask away. And here's one. So what happens when you stop weight loss medications? So this is a really good question. So we do know that if you come off the weight loss medication too quickly, yes, we will see some weight regain. This is no different to if you were on a diet. If you're on that 5 and 2 diet or whatever. If you haven't got those strategies in place, yes, when you come off the medication, we do see some weight regain. It's not as much as what's spoken about in the mass media. It's a lot less than that. Any sort of weight loss that you have seen with the medication is still a benefit. But yes, we do need to titrate off them slower. I heard someone struggle with Ozempic. Does this always happen? So no. So the question is, do people get side effects all the time? Not necessarily. So weight loss medications are handled pretty well for the most part. I don't see many people running away with nausea. Like I said, I've never seen anyone vomit unless they've done something funny. But generally these medications are well tolerated. I think what the issue is the newspaper articles and Daily Mail. They love clickbait, and so they'll put lots of silly information on. Should I be taking supplements? That's also a really good question. So the good answer to that is probably not, unless you had some blood tests that have not shown any sort of nutrient deficiencies. No. What we're actually seeing at the moment is B6 toxicity. I've had a few patients have it. They've had peripheral neuropathy, so they've had numbness and tingling in their hands or down their back. And it's because B6 is thrown into everything. So you'll see it added into magnesium supplements, you'll see it into normal supplements, you might see it in creatine powder, you might see it in protein powders. So you've got to be really, really careful when you're taking supplements. Supplements are not needed if you're on a good eating habit, if you're eating lots of veggies, you're having lots of fruits, you're having your protein. You definitely don't need to be on supplements unless you're pregnant or you've had weight loss surgery or, like I said, you're having a deficiency, then yes, of course. So what about high fiber, low GI bread as an alternative? Yeah, so I often tell my patients about low GI, high fiber breads because they'll have a lot less carbohydrate in them. Not saying carbohydrates are bad, they're certainly not. But they definitely have a lot more protein in them. There's a lot more fiber in them. So they should make you feel fuller for longer. It's also really good for blood sugar control with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. Certainly with weight loss, if we can bulk feed you on low GI bread, that's high in fiber, much better than the white bread alternative. And the other question here, is there a diabetic diet? No, there actually isn't. So there is still this misconception that if someone has type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, they need to go on a diabetic diet. This doesn't exist. The way that we manage this is just changing how we eat carbohydrates, because we still need to eat carbohydrates, but we tend to pick the low GI versus the high GI. So low GI is always the ones that are less processed. The best example I can say is if you compare, the word's gone out of my head, but some of those crackers, as soon as they touch your tongue and your lips, they start to dissolve. That's a low GI. That's a high GI alternative carbohydrate because the work is already done. Versus if you were to eat something grainy, as soon as it touches your tongue, you've got to eat it and chew it, and it hits your tummy, and your stomach's still got to do a lot of the work. So we always try and offer GI alternatives. I've got an emailed question. So how do I know if my weight loss plateau is due to diet, exercise, or something else? So this is a really good question. So weight loss plateau is not necessarily a bad thing because if you were at a certain weight and we put you in a calorie deficit, your weight's going to catch up with that. So that's kind of a good thing. Some people hate being on a plateau because they think I'm doing the same as what I was doing before and I'm just stuck. It just means we need to go on a diet break or we need to do a bit of a calorie deficit again. So sometimes people can hit plateaus too because they unknowingly are eating more calories than they think, or like their metabolism has started to adapt to that lower intake. So we need to go on a diet break. Like I was mentioning before, exercise, so the body becomes a little bit more efficient over time with the food that you eat, the exercise that you do. So you do tend to burn fewer calories for the same activity. And certainly hormones and stress can be a contributing factor. So we do know high levels of cortisol. This can lead to fat retention, especially around the belly. You might have thyroid issues. You might see some insulin resistance. So not quite the straightforward answer I give you because we would need to look at the greater picture of things. I also got emailed another question. So can you explain the difference between losing weight and losing fat? So when you look at weight loss, weight includes fat, it includes muscle, and it also includes water in our body. So that's the difference. So when we're trying to do weight loss, we're trying to attack fat loss. So this is reducing body fat while we're preserving lean muscle mass. So when I see clients that are, trying to lose weight, I always encourage them to do measurements because measurements are important because you might stand on the scale and not see any changes, but your clothes are feeling looser. So we know that that is fat loss versus weight loss because we know we're going to lose muscle mass with any sort of weight loss strategy. And so to preserve that, protein and exercise is super important. I'll give it another minute if anyone's got any other questions, but that brings us to 45 minutes. No. Okie dokie. So thank you everyone for coming. It's so nice to see so many names on there. Hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any questions and you didn't want to put it in the chat, please email me. This has been recorded, so it'll be sent out. And I'll see you soon.